We recording?
Yeah.
Oh, hey guys.
Hey, video.
How you guys doing?
I'm excited about this one.
Yeah. I mean,
Hello.
hello.
My name is Mauro,
And I'm Dan.
and this is
Cool
Animal
People.
A very cool animal person joined us on the podcast today.
Yeah.
Who has lived probably more than most.
Yeah, I think today's episode is definitely a animal nerding out episode.
Oh yeah, we can't even count it as an interview. I think there were two questions.
Yeah, I think we were just like kind of just fangirling a little bit about the amazing experiences our guest has had. So he was named by People magazine as one of the sexiest men alive.
Yeah.
He is the host of Evan Goes Wild on Animal Planet. He has a book out called Worldwide Vet. And today...
Available everywhere books are sold. And Audible.
Yeah. So today we had
With
on...
a 4.9 out of 5 rating.
Really?
On Audible, yeah. I'm looking at the ratings. 4.8 out of 5 in Barnes & Noble. This book is great. Like, just go buy the book. Our guest today...
Dr. Evan Antin.
Dr. Evan Antin. If you don't know who Dr. Evan Antin is, a quick Google search will make you fall in love with him.
Seriously, this guy is... Obviously, he's a handsome gentleman.
He's an amazing human being. I've said that so many times during this podcast.
I think
we
get to talk to really awesome people.
He has done so much for bringing awareness to certain conservation efforts.
Yeah.
Traveling the country, helping all these organizations.
Traveling the world.
Sorry, yeah, traveling the world. I don't know why I said country.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
Yeah, he's everywhere. Just helping these organizations. Obviously, he has skills as a vet. You know, he's
a practicing veterinarian.
He's a practicing veterinarian out in California. And honestly, just getting to travel the world and helping organizations, animals, conservation efforts, just seems like the kind of thing dreams are made of in terms of us.
Yeah,
as animal lovers, that's our dream to be able to do that, and he's living that dream.
Yeah,
know?
I think eventually we'll end up on an episode of something he's doing. So Evan, remember that. I asked a lot of him today. I asked for a vet school recommendation, but no, like he was an awesome interview, great conversationalist.
We went from education all the way up to snakes and Komodo dragons.
Rhinos.
And whale sharks. And
lorises.
It's just an amazing conversation filled with... he was good at giving out information that we just take for granted, technically. But honestly, if you like animals, if you like reptiles, if you like helping animals and people...
Yeah, if you're big on wildlife conservation,
this is your episode.
This is an episode for you. So without further ado, Dr. Evan Antin.
Here's Evan.
Boom. Welcome, everybody. We are here today with People Magazine's Sexiest Veterinarian. He is the host of Evan Goes Wild and has an amazing book out called Worldwide Vet. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Dr. Evan Antin. Evan, thank you so much for being here.
Me. Yeah, man. I've been looking forward to this.
Beautiful. So, obviously, we know who you are, but we would love to give our fans a little bit of background, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a small animal, exotic, and wildlife veterinarian. So I practice in Conejo Valley Vet Hospital in Thousand Oaks, California, and I've been living in Southern California since I graduated vet school in 2013. I'm also obsessed with wildlife in the natural world, and so I've been traveling and looking for wildlife and looking to work and help with them for over 15 years. But now that I'm a vet, I can kind of give back to the nature and wildlife that I've always loved so much over the years as a veterinarian, and I'm very fortunate to have a platform where I kind of show my work and what I do, whether it's through my social media or my book or my show, and get to raise awareness and help animals in a larger scale, regarding these conservation aspects of wildlife species or habitats and whatnot. And I just want to correct something. So the book is called World Wild Vet.
Oh,
and
what did I say?
Worldwide, and trust
so
me, bro, don't even feel bad because literally everyone says that.
It's
and
a
even
pun.
My,
it's a pun.
All right.
It's a pun.
My publishers were like, it could be a little tongue twister. I'm like, I like it though because it's world wild, you know.
Yeah.
But everybody says worldwide, so I don't feel bad at all.
Well, that's what this green screen for. We're gonna put
the
cover of the book and everything up here. So
perfect.
You know, our viewers will definitely get it right. So obviously, you're passionate about helping animals, helping wildlife, conservation efforts all around the world.
And pets too. I love our pets. I grew up with pets.
Just like a general animal.
Just a regular fluffer that lives in an apartment, you know?
I mean, you guys get it. We're animal people here.
We're from the same realm. But I guess what we want to know is how you got started. I mean, we both know how passionate you are for animals, and we both know how we got started in our passion with animals. But how did that come about for you?
Well, I mean, it all started, I guess, at a young age, at least my passion for animals. I didn't necessarily know I wanted to be a vet, but I grew up in Kansas, not far from Kansas City, and we had a creek in the backyard. And so, I mean, every day, my earliest memories, I was a kid flipping rocks, looking for snakes and turtles and insects and getting in the creek and catching crawdads. And I just love the natural world. Like, I couldn't get enough of it. I always enjoyed it. And I can't explain why. It was just a natural, innate fascination and something I just wanted to explore more and more as I got older. You know, once I got into like middle school and high school, I was more into being social and, you know, playing, you know, in sports and trying to do okay in school and partying and doing all the high school, you know, school stuff. And then in my senior year of high school, I had a great teacher that taught a zoology course. I'm like, this is pretty neat, you know, that was fun. And then I go to college at University of Colorado at Boulder, and I started in the business school. But I took some biology electives. I took Gen Bio 1 and evolutionary biology. And I just fell in love. Like I learned a lot, and I found myself for the first time enjoying learning these subjects. And I did okay in school, you know, but I didn't like it that much. Like I had a good math science brain and I could get through it, but it was never like exciting to me. But I actually really enjoyed learning when I learned all about, especially evolutionary biology and learning how adaptations work and fitness and just the natural world. It just made
That's my favorite
it made
too.
so
Absolutely.
much sense.
It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I find it so fascinating. And then you can start seeing these things on your own, and you can start like predicting why animals have certain morphologic features or certain lifestyles given their habitat or their predators or prey or whatever it is. And I always to this day, I still find that very, very interesting.
I've got like
and so at the end of that first year,
burned into my brain.
Yeah.
Bio.
At the end of that first year of college, I was like, man, you know, medicine is so interesting, and I've always kind of had a fascination with surgery. And for a split second, I thought maybe I wanted to be a human doctor. And then I learned, I did a little bit of volunteering and looked into it. And I was like, man, you really have to specialize to practice in the U.S. Like you kind of just have to focus on one thing, which can be cool. I'm not hating on that, but there's so many different aspects I wanted to do, and I love animals so much, and realized, man, I can do veterinary work, I can do surgery, I can travel and work with wildlife if things go right, and everything, pans out, and realized that, going into vet school would be my best, that's probably my calling, that's probably what I should be doing. And so the end of my freshman year or early sophomore year, I can't remember, but I changed my major to evolutionary and ecological biology, and that was what appeared to be the most relevant for me if I wanted to go into vet school. And not that you have to do a major like that. You can, it's even better to do other majors if you get all your prereqs done. They'd love to see you have a literature, major or whatever. But yeah, so I just kind of made that change and didn't look back. I started volunteering that first summer after my first year at the Greenwood Wildlife Rehab Sanctuary, not far from Boulder, Colorado. And that was my first real hands-on wildlife rescue work. And I was a squirrel and raccoon intern and just working with our native wildlife in Colorado and loved it. Gained a new appreciation for those species. Got to work with a few other species while I was there, a few other birds and some coyotes and some other things. And then the next year, my junior year, I did a study abroad semester in Australia. And that opened up my eyes to so many things, and it's like that was my first time really traveling by myself outside the country, and it was somewhere which has so many parallels with the U.S. It's not like the most adventurous place, but I made it an adventure. And in my last month when I was there, there's a big gap between your last day of classes and finals. I think at most universities in Australia, and it's meant to like study and just get ready for finals. And I was like, this is a great time to travel and see more of this place. Right, I got like 3.5-4 weeks. So I flew to the other side of the country in Western Australia, rented a car, and just drove all over the outback. I dove with whale sharks, was all over the Northwest, like checking out these waterfalls and seeing my favorite wildlife and catching monitor lizards and all kinds of stuff. And then drove down to the dead center and saw like Ayers Rock and Kings Canyon and Uluru and all that crazy stuff. And then went up north to the top end, which is like it's like the Everglades on crack. It's like Kakadu National Park. I mean, there's waterfalls too. It's not just like flat wetland. Like it's just got so much gorgeous natural beauty and super neat wildlife there. Tons of crocodiles and like road cruising at night, looking for snakes and all kinds of stuff. It was such a blast. And over that, a little before that trip, I realized, you know what, I want to be a vet. I want to work with individual animals. But I was so inspired by people like Steve Irwin and like Jeff Corwin growing up. And I thought, you know what, these guys made me more excited about wildlife than anybody has influenced me in my life to this point. Like I want to do the same. I want to do what they do. Like personally, I would love it, obviously, but if I can get people excited about these animals and share more about their neat adaptations, from that aspect, and then talk more about their conservation too, and try to raise awareness, because that's our first step in conservation, just getting people aware of what the problem is. If you don't know, how are you going to help? How are you going to care? And so I started making these like educational videos. And so I had my mom ship out my camcorder, and I got like a tripod. I was living in this car that I rented in that last 3-week trip when I was there. And I like just got, those huge like 10-gallon jugs of water and a bunch of canned food, and just slept in the car because I didn't have a big budget to stay places. So it was just like, let's just make this work. And I'd catch like a big stand monitor or a black-headed python and talk about it on camera and talk about the neat, morphology and the adaptations and the natural history and their diet and whatever, and made this really horrible amateur video and didn't even know what I was going to do with it. I was like, hopefully I'll, come across paths with producers or whatever. And there was, this is 2006. Social media was barely a thing. I've been on Facebook.
YouTube.
Facebook was like 2 years old. Yeah. YouTube was what?
Everything was in its infancy. I feel like if those would have gone up on YouTube, you would be like one of the highest subscribed YouTubers.
Maybe
currently.
I don't know, man. I mean, I put them on YouTube just figuring, what the hell, I might as well. And like, I kept doing that for the following years. The next year, my senior year, I did another semester abroad in Tanzania, and it was a smaller program, and it was a wildlife ecology and conservation program, and it was all in northern Tanzania, and just going to different national parks and private reserves and getting a hands-on African wildlife, and what conservation means in that part of the world, which is really different than somewhere like Australia. Australia, poaching is not like their biggest issue. It's more about invasive species. Then you go to Africa, and it's like poaching and bushmeat and the illegal wildlife trade and animal parts like rhino horn stuff, which I'm going to be doing soon. We can talk about that. But and just seeing, going to a developing country, like, oh my gosh, just as a human, I learned so much about what to value and appreciate coming from where I come from. And then you see how dramatically different what their struggles are. Yet at the end of the day, we still have so many parallels. We still, as humans, have so much in common, more than you would think. But, man, that kind of stuff opened my eyes. And every year thereafter, I would save up enough money between semesters of, between undergrad and vet school, and then between semesters and years in vet school, just saving up money for a ticket, usually going somewhere in the tropics because my favorite wildlife was there. Yeah. And fortunately, as an American citizen, like the U.S. dollar's in our favor, so you got to fork up some money for a ticket, but I could live cheap, staying in crappy hostels and eating basic food and getting to see, getting to go to my favorite, parks and wildlife habitats and see my favorite wildlife in the world and reach out to rescues and just, always trying to ask if there's any way I can help. Can I please just hang out? Can I volunteer? I'll do anything. I'll clean up, Cotamundi shit or help out with a bird surgery or whatever I can do. And kept doing that after vet school too, and then, I did a couple shows after I graduated, like TV shows, and I think I don't know if they found me on YouTube or how that panned out, but the first TV show I ever did was a Kris Jenner show as a guest wildlife expert, and she had a season or two, and it was a blast. We had like a 13-minute segment. I had 6 different animals. Nene Leakes is this Real Housewife from Atlanta, and she was on there, and everything scares the shit out of her. It was hilarious. So, like, I've got a kookaburra, and she's just like, oh. And then I had this, this little brown lemur, and it jumped off of me. Like, it was really cool. It was mellow and everything. Yeah. And it was a captive, non-releasable kind of like animal edutainment, educational, kind of animal. and it jumped off me onto Chris, onto Nini, and she just screamed and then ran off. And then she came back, and like one of the next animals I brought out was like a like 6.5, 7 foot American alligator. And then she was like, "No."
Nope.
It was so funny. That's another like side story. But yeah, I did a couple TV things, you know. And then in 2000, I guess in 2014 is the first time People magazine reached out. And I still, man, I asked them, and
yeah, how'd
I was
that happen?
Dude, I never got a for sure answer. I'm not 100% sure. And like, I loved working with them. They're great. I just was in communication with different people, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Let me check with this person how he found you," because I just asked just out of curiosity. I never fully found out, so I don't 100% know. So it was either probably one of those shows or maybe my YouTube or something. I didn't have a big, social media or anything at that point.
I'm sure the Kris Jenner show definitely helped.
I would imagine it was something like that. Yeah, that's what I figured. And then, they reached out. I was in the first time I was in the SMA Sexiest Man Alive issue, and then this online digital publication called Bored Panda did a piece on me in early 2016, and I didn't know it was happening, and it was a great piece. Like I'm super happy about it, and I just hit 10,000 followers on Instagram over slow, like steady growth for doing it for like 3-something years at that point. I started at the end of my vet school, and I graduated in 2013. So just posting my cases, neat patients, some travels when I could, and then they did a piece on me, and I went from like 10,000 to 15,000 overnight, which was, I'd never grown like that.
Yeah,
it was a jump. And then Huffington Post and like BuzzFeed and a bunch of other publications and magazines and stuff reached out and wanted to do interviews. And then I had like a viral moment, if you will, and then I went from, that 15,000 to about 200,000+ in a couple weeks.
That's wild.
And then it's grown from there, which has been great. But that's been one of the biggest blessings in my life. And I've had great opportunities. I worked my butt off, but I've had really awesome opportunities and blessings that have come my way as well to help me get to where I am. And I would say, I have to say that played a good role too.
Yeah, it's incredible, like just the impact that social media has just on everything. Like, from what we've done with just the little podcast. We have a little segment we do on YouTube called Dog Walkers Try.
Yeah.
And it just started on what was the first one we did?
We ate treats. We ate dog treats.
Literally did a taste test of dog treats.
We just started eating dog treats. And people watched it.
People
liked it.
Really liked it.
Oh, you guys eating dog treats?
Yeah, it's us eating dog treats and actually reviewing them.
Yeah, we were doing like a taste test. You've seen like the taste test. Oh, this is, good aftertaste, good rind.
And you guys are being like all sincere and just being like, well, that's...
because
I was recommending like what cheeses you should pair with
like
with your
we just
dog
went
treats
through
for
all
yourself.
these
That's amazing.
all these popular brands and people loved it.
Yeah.
People it was just, I think it was like at 10 o'clock at night. We went to Target. We bought a bunch of dog treats and we were like, just film us eating
Let's
dog
just
treats.
eat some dog treats and make a video.
I'm in a dog costume. And like something as stupid as that can get you the traction that you need for other stuff. And we started working with BuzzFeed because of that.
Yeah, we started doing live streams with them, and it's incredible. I did a very deep dive on you, by the way. So I listened to a bunch of podcasts and watched all of your shows. But one of the things I heard you say by the way, I love your show. We're going to get into that.
Thank you, brother.
One of the things I did hear you say, though, was you were talking about that social media does have a positive impact, but you're talking about animal conservation. I think you were talking about how you were worried about the negatives that kind of came along with that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I'd like to. Thank you for bringing that up. Now, of course, there are a lot of positive people doing very positive things, and I'm so thankful for them, and we need those people. And I don't want to sound discouraged or anything like that. But what I've kind of said over the years over the last couple of years is from what I've seen, I just worry that the net impact on our wildlife and its conservation through social media, I'm worried there's more of a negative impact than a positive one, and that's for many different reasons. Starting with, for example, I really started seeing this. I think I really started noticing it. That the net impact. I knew there was bad stuff. Like we see stuff and we're like, that's not great. But I really started worrying that the net impact might be a not good one, because the content that gets the furthest when it comes to animals, a lot of it's not great.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and a lot of the good people doing good things, like the best people doing like the really real stuff, like they're in the trenches full on, they don't tend to have that big a following.
No,
they're also not filming it while they're doing it.
And they don't get the exposure.
Most of the people don't film
it. Exactly. Like their priorities are really in their work and what they're doing, and they don't have the expertise or necessarily the Wi-Fi ability because they're in the middle of whatever. Working with these animals, it's just not a realistic, you know, part of their brand or their MBO, NGO or whatever they do.
Yeah.
Or an MPO, sorry. And so I mean, man, you see stuff like you see chimps playing on Instagram. You know, you see chimps as looking like pets or wearing clothes and that kind of thing, and like that stuff gets so viral. It goes so far, and I think the underlying message of people appreciate these animals and they like chimps and they think they're cool, I think that's there. I don't think this is because people have the wrong, you know, their heart's not in the right place, and and that they don't like these animals or don't want what's best for that individual or the species as a whole. And so that, like, I'm happy about that. The sad thing is there's so much ignorance. Okay, so like when you spread content like that, a brutal reality of that is that it fuels the poaching industry of chimpanzees. And so when that gets really big, and we're talking about other places like certain parts of Southeast Asia. This happens in China too, but China obviously doesn't see our Instagram really.
Yeah.
But and then in Syria and other countries in the Middle East, you know, people are like, oh, you know, I want a pet chimp, or like, let's get a chimp and get him in like our little roadside zoo circus thing. Like, not a good zoo, not a good situation, like not good. And let's, you know, we can have it do little tricks and, you know, have tourists pay to watch whatever. And it's horrible, man, because those chimps that get there, they're poached straight from the wild.
Yeah.
And an average of 10 chimps die every time a baby's abducted from the wild.
And they're accessible to everyday people. They're accessible.
Yeah, no, and people don't know that. You know, people don't realize, like, this is bad, you guys. Like, you don't want to share this and like it and comment and say, oh, my God, how cute. Oh, my God, I want one, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're fueling one of the ugliest poaching industries, you know, that I'm familiar with. And I mean, chimps are like us, you know, that we have 99, 98, whatever percent roughly, give or take, DNA similarities. And when you see chimps in the wild or in captivity, I mean, they really look like just really furry people with weird proportions compared to us. And their mannerisms, the way they act, the way they treat each other. I mean, they can be a little bit rough on each other, but like, dude, they're like little people. And so if you try to steal one of their babies, the entire family's going to fight to the death to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah. So every other individual gets killed. And those animals are used for bushmeat, and I'm not saying that makes me feel that much better about it, you know, but it's, you know, they are feeding people, whatever. But that's an average of 10. I mean, it's often 20 or 30 member families that are dying because one baby has to get abducted and taken from the wild. And then, so chimps are a hardy primate species. You know, we were talking about some veterinary stuff, and from the veterinary aspect, some primates are tougher than others. Yeah. And as an ape, chimps are tough, man. Yeah. Like they can really go through hell and back physically, and come back and be relatively physically healthy. But you know, it goes to show you when 8 to 9 out of 10 of the babies that are taken from the wild die before they reach their final destination. Jesus. Because of the horrible conditions. They're sitting in the back of a trunk for days or weeks on end. They're tied up on a rope, not getting food and water. Like, they're just, I mean, they're not going to survive that. No animal will. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, when you see a chimp, and it is somebody's pet in Syria, or it is at a little zoo in China, an average of 100 chimps died to get that baby there, between all the babies and the family members, right? So social media fuels that, and that breaks my heart. And that content gets so much engagement. And then you see other profiles where they're, you know, like I'm sure you guys are familiar with, or saw Tiger King, right? I mean, that was huge in the animal world and the whole world.
It was only a year ago.
That's a horrible industry. Yeah. I mean, that's a fucked industry, and it shouldn't be a thing. And people support it because they don't know any better.
That's the big thing.
It was the drama aspect. It was the reality show aspect of it that fueled everything, and it went viral, and people talking about it, and like, oh, they took sides. They took sides between characters.
Oh, 100%.
Like, they were all terrible.
I think, like you're saying,
no, that's what people don't realize. There's no protagonist in that story.
Like, there's no
good guy doing good things. They're all super sketchy. They're all bad news. And just to clarify what I meant, people also support even the cub petting. Yeah. And cub petting's no bueno, man. I mean, no. That's just one of the biggest disasters in captive wildlife. And we're breeding tigers to be able to be pet for like 2 months of their life legally. It's only supposed to be a month or two, maybe a month in some states. And then these facilities don't have the means to keep, all 8 or 6 or however many babies that a mama has, and it can be a lot. And then they have to go find new homes. And so they get sold to some other shitty zoo that's not doing anything for conservation. They're just trying to make some money off people. Or worst case, they get shipped to, Thailand or somewhere where they're going to be in some crappy zoo there. Yeah. And what's legal in zoos there is shocking and very disappointing. And then, of course, a lot of those animals are slaughtered for animal parts to go on the black market because that's where they're really going to cash in. And it's much easier to pull that off in countries like that. And they're already in the markets. They're selling them in Southeast Asia. So, that stuff gets big on social media. And then we talk about one of the biggest problems is, in addition to these, is that there's so many bullshit organizations saying, hey, we want to help this wildlife. We want to help this habitat. Like, if you donate to us, we'll make a difference. And then if you look at their numbers or what their conservation work is, dude, they're not doing shit. They're not doing anything for conservation. They put a little bit of money here, or they protect some animals that don't really need that protection. Like, it really needs to go to other animals. Yeah. And so for me, those people are worse than poachers. They're as bad as anybody because you know better. Yeah. You fucking know what you're doing. You're taking money from the animals that need it. You know what the problem is. You're not. I mean, at least poachers are like, yeah, dude.
This is what I do.
I want to make money. Like, they're not lying to your face.
They're
not. I mean, they're not.
These people are pocketing charity money and not actually.
They're taking money from animals. Like, people that give it are like, I want to help these animals. Yeah. That's what's important to me. I want this to go back to the animals, and it's not for many of these companies. It's just not. Yeah. And it's like you're taking money that should be going to the animals and super needed. Like our rhino crisis. That's my next trip. I'm leaving in less than a week to go trim 40 rhino horns, 40 rhinos horns, so like 80 horns, right? Because we want to, they're less vulnerable to poaching when we take their horns off. We can talk more about that. But man, there's so many organizations saying they're going to help out with rhino and wildlife, and they're not. And it kills me.
It's heartbreaking to watch.
That's a big one.
Because there's so many people out there who, you're sitting here stateside. Like I've been to Kenya, I've been out in Masai Mara, and like you see these animals. I got to go to the elephant sanctuary in Nairobi, and like I was this close to being like, fuck it, I'm not going back. I just want to stay here because it's incredible being able to see these baby elephants. They also had a couple baby rhinos there. And it's just like you hear these stories and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And then, talking about these organizations like that where they're misleading people because the average person, someone who's not in like the animal industry isn't going to necessarily know like, all right, maybe what they're saying doesn't check out or maybe what they're doing isn't the right way to do this. And if you've got someone who's got enough, money and time to spend on some good branding, some good video content, you make some sad-looking video.
Or celebrities that don't know any better to promote it.
Exactly.
And boom. And they're much better at that than the people doing the real thing.
That's the
people
that
really
sucks.
Have their heart in animals. I mean, that's one of the toughest things for conservationists is because their heart's in the right place and they're really good with the animals and whatnot. I'd say 80-90% of the time they're not very good at business. Yeah. They don't really know how to allocate funds, and they're just like living on the edge in terms of what they can afford and what they can actually do because they just don't know that world. That's not their strong suit. Yeah. And then the business people that know what's up, they're not really doing shit for animals many times. They know how to get the business up. They know how to make money. Yeah. And then they'll take content from the people really doing. I mean, I was in touch with a big one, and I'm not going to say names here. Yeah. But I was in touch with a big one because they took a video from people that I work with personally, that I know and I've worked with on the ground, that they're doing good work, and you donate to them, you're helping wildlife straight up. Like it's all for the right reasons. And they got a video from them, didn't tag them, and said, hey, like, look what's going on. We need to help the rhino, right? I'm like, hey, like, that was with an organization I work with, and you didn't tag them or anything, and like I know their money is going to the right place. Yeah. And I didn't say this in that DM, but I know that the organization that posted that, I know what they're doing for rhino conservation, and I know it's not doing anything for rhino conservation really. Yeah. Like they're doing this much. And they're making it sound like they do this much. They're doing this much.
Bare minimum.
And so I called them out in a DM, like privately. Like I'm not trying to like blast them. I don't want to like, I don't want to make things ugly or whatever. And they didn't after I bugged them 3 times, they finally tagged them. But it's the kind of tag in a video where you have to like click the video to see the tag. They didn't put it in the caption kind of thing. Yeah. And then, I think I got back. I was like, hey, is there any way you can put in the caption, like, I'm telling you, these people, like, work their butts off in the trenches. They literally put their lives on the line. Like, literally, they're going to risk their lives to save these animals. And I'm not saying it, but I'm like, I know you guys don't do that. And I know you're not going to risk much of your money, let alone your life. Like, can you please just, like, help them out? Like, they're the ones doing this, and you took their content. And then they were dicks. Like, the guy was a total dick. He's like, do better. He's just telling me, like, it was just disappointing.
Wait, he told you to do better?
All the time.
That's insane.
Yeah, he's like talking shit to me, and I didn't get into it with him. I'm like, okay, whatever, man. I was just trying to do the right thing. My sole interest was just to get, to get the help that people want to give to the people that are going to give the help. Yeah. It's just for the rhino. Like, I feel like if I didn't say anything, I'm not stepping up for the rhino in the way that I should, and the wildlife in the way that I should. It was nothing personal. I don't care about them as people, like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get into it just to start shit. That's not me. But I feel like if I don't say anything in that moment, then I'm like, I just felt like something needed to be said, and I was a person that could say, because I've worked with the people that own that footage.
Well, that tells you everything, with what their objective is. Like, this asshole company, they refuse to tag an organization that actually helps rhinos.
And it was their content.
It was their content, while they are claiming themselves that they are trying to help the rhino.
It's purely financially motivated.
Are you kidding me? That's like the biggest kind of asshole.
It is. It's a business for them.
Yeah.
It's a business, and they make great money, and they can reach out to influencers. And a lot of the influencers, I met them, people and have supported them and whatnot. And I'm not like, hey, like, these people are fucked, like, but I'm just like, hey, like, there's just other organizations, and just I want you guys to think about it. And I try to be, I try not to, like, stir the pot in that world, because it's already a very complicated world of conservation. Even amongst the good people, you see good people doing it slightly different than other good people, and they butt heads. It's like there's already issues there, let alone the bad people.
Yeah.
So I try to talk to people when I can, and without throwing people under the bus, because it's just a complicated world and whatnot. But it's extremely frustrating, and I mean, that's something I'm passionate about and wanting to do, something bigger to get that information out there. And just, it's so hard to navigate who to support.
Yeah.
And this is a problem for me. I don't even always know, and I'm fairly dialed into that world, and I've been to a lot of these places. Even some of the people I've worked with and met, I've, like, heard other things about them, and it's just like, damn, dude, like, how do you know? It's so tough. And I just want to out that and make it way more transparent, and change how people can go about that for those of us that just maybe want to donate a little something, and just make sure it's going to the right place.
I think that's the part that's frustrating too.
I'm grabbing a glass of water, by the way. We're just going for a quick walk.
Go ahead. You're good. I think that's the part that's the most frustrating, is, like, the transparency aspect. It's something with technology today that could be implemented so easily. Most people don't know about Charity Navigator. They don't know to, like, go look at, what's the ratio of, impact dollars versus operational expenses, things like that. Like, I started a nonprofit with a couple of friends of mine from high school, and what we did was we provided kids with access to food, water, education, and shelter. And our first project
really cool.
was in Kenya. And the first thing about running a nonprofit that blew my mind was nobody checks anything. Nobody wants to, no one like goes to validate anything. Nobody even, I had one person in like 6 years ask for proof of our 501c3. And it's like, it's not on people for not understanding that. Like, they just don't know. And it's like, after I did it, I was like, oh my God, I see how people are able to get away with this stuff so easily.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing, man. Like, at Charity Navigator, for example, you can still
manipulate it.
You can still make it look like you're doing good.
Yeah.
And you're not. Like, there's 501s that their numbers look good, or they have a good score.
Yeah.
They have, I forget if it's a grading system or 97 out of 100 or whatever. But it's they look really, you can look really solid on that and not be really solid. And it's like, how, like, it's not impossible, but it is really tough. And for me, when I promote a nonprofit or an organization or a rescue or whatever, like, I'm so lucky, but I've been able to work with these people firsthand, and I know,
the work's
I've done
being
it,
done.
I've seen it, and I don't know their finances. I'm not opening their books or whatever, but like, I know, I've gotten to know these people, and I know what they're after, and I know how they spend their money, and I know where it's going, and I know the kind of work they do, and I do know the numbers when it comes to that, and just in the volume of animals that they're helping, and they're given their resources and their funds and their donations and all that stuff. So anytime I support somebody, it's almost always firsthand. Like, trust me, it's good. I've been there. Like, I personally donate to them. I give them my money as well. Like, you're going to be good. But there's millions of them. I mean, I was just talking with, so the organization I'm working with is Rhino 911. I'm heading out there on Wednesday, and we're doing some horn trims and whatnot, doing some conservation work. And I was just chatting with somebody that's going to be working with them, and they reminded me there's 398 rhino nonprofits in South Africa alone. Jesus. And there's probably more in that country than any other country, because 85% of our rhino are in South Africa, in the world even. And it's like, man, that's insane. Because when I talk to the co-founders of Rhino 911, they're like, really, it's probably 5 that are doing real things.
Wow.
5. So that's what, like 1.25%, something like that. Yeah. Like, whew. And that's just how it is. And I think that's probably how it is around the world. It's probably like 1%, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I don't know. But it's like, by far, most of these organizations are not that great. I mean, even the big ones.
Yeah.
They've got their hands in I mean, the big ones. They do things, and, it's just brutal, because when you think about it, how can these people advertise their work? How can they market their work?
Yeah.
What needs to be the reality for them to say, we need to help these animals? These animals need to be endangered. They need to be in threat. These habitats need to be threatened. So if we get the job done and our rhino populations are not critically endangered, and now they're safe and they're secure and they're protected and their population's growing,
no more dollars.
How can we ask for money when it's going well? Like, we need them to be in that state.
I feel like that should be the goal.
That's the literal
goal. Is like not needing to do what you're doing.
Well, that's the sad thing, because like there are enough problems to go around.
Yeah.
If we we figure out the rhino situation, we still have plenty of African wildlife.
Oh yeah.
To sort out before we get that, before we move on. Let alone we start talking about other continents or other countries. Like, they're not going to run out of good causes. I know it's more complicated than that, and you getting invested in a cause, it's probably more expensive than to stay with the same cause, and from the business perspective. But aren't we trying to do that? Like, And
you have, like you said, smaller organizations that are literally on the ground. They're doing like hands-on work that don't have the capital or the means or the team to put a commercial or have a website or post on Instagram all the time.
Like knowing what to post.
Yeah, like it's a whole science.
Just the literal bandwidth.
Yeah, it's tough.
I've been out like in backcountry, parts of Africa. You don't have cell service out there. It's not like you're going to be live streaming on Instagram. Like, it's not easy to do that.
I mean, there's more now than there ever was before. And that's really just, I mean, I've seen it, even in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's gotten better. But man, when I first started volunteering, like, I couldn't even get in touch with a lot of these rescues. They didn't have access to email all the time. They had to go into town or go somewhere else just to open some really, low speed internet, whatever. And I was going in internet cafes myself. I wasn't on Wi-Fi constantly. I'd be out in the bush for a week with guides, living in, sleeping in hammocks and on a fire. Like, communication wasn't there. It wasn't easy. And it's gotten better, but still, for a lot of these people, especially when you go to the Congo and places like that, like, dude,
I couldn't imagine.
You're not going to get a lot of communication,
Have you gotten to spend any time in the Congo by any chance?
Oh, the Democratic Republic of Congo, yeah. So, like, that's actually the first time I got to work with chimps. Wild chimps in a rescue setting, so they weren't wild.
By the way, that's Dan's dream. Every time you mention that you've worked with chimps,
that's
really.
I want to have I would like to do small animal practice, but like I love large animals. But like pinnacle for me is I would love to be able to work with primates. Like that's my absolute dream.
They're very special. They can be very scary.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I like that part of them though. There's you have to have that level of healthy respect for. Okay, if this goes south, he can take my hands off.
I need to do the right thing, or he'll murder me.
Yeah, and like just their, working with dangerous animals and wildlife, they're not as predictable. As some of the other animals you work with. I mean, especially like compared to like reptiles, for example, which is completely different. But if I'm working with even like, one of the most venomous snakes in the world, like if you break it down and don't get in your head like, hey, if I get tagged, it might be over. Like it's like that, really high risk, whatever situation. I have a very good handle on this animal's range of motion.
Yeah.
I know how far it can strike. I know roughly how fast it can move. I know where I can put myself that's not going to be in danger of where he or she can put their self, or even a big crocodile. I mean, a little snake, whatever, but like a big croc. Like I have an idea of how fast crocs can move. I know how they swing their jaw when they try to bite. I know how they're going to operate. And when we're talking about even big cats or some of these other animals, they do more predictable things. Whereas a chimp, dude, they can just turn, and they can go from being, they're not, some other animals can like be deceiving, but primates, oh my goodness, they can be like your best buddy and cuddling up on you, and then they want to bite a chunk of your ear off.
Yeah.
And it might even be for fun. They might not even be scared. It's just like they can be so unpredictable. And then, of course, they've got, a lot of them have pretty big canines.
Yeah.
They're very their dexterity is remarkable. Even some of the bigger monkeys, let alone apes, are just so strong. I mean, a chimpanzee, pound for pound, I'm just like a water balloon next to them. I got nothing on them. And I'm not like a little weak guy, but like, dude, a chimp could rip my arms right off my body kind of thing. And I've heard stories of this, of them literally like jumping. I heard this one story. This chimp jumped on a zookeeper, grabbed his arm, and then he jumped to he jumped on the guy, had his arm in the chimp's arms, and then he had one foot like on his neck here, and then the other foot like under his arm, and then he was grabbing the arm and just like pulled it off. He just was like, "That's mine," and he just straight ripped it off.
Yeah.
And like, I've heard other stories of primates not even trying to be, trying to hurt somebody, but just they don't even know their strength.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorites was this, and this wasn't an orangutan that I met, but I was talking to another guy, and he was working at a zoo, and they had these carpenters making like a bridge for this orangutan exhibit, and this carpenter was warned, like, listen, it was a subadult female orangutan, so not super big, super gentle, sweet animal, like was always very gentle and never hurt anybody or anything. But when he was making this bridge, between the wood slats, there was enough room for her to reach her hands up. Ooh. And like, hey, just warning, like she can reach her hands up, like be super careful, like she's not aggressive, she's cool, but just be aware of that. The guy apparently was a little bit too lax about it, standing in this area where she could totally reach up. She did, and his foot was like, if this is his foot, his toes, and the back of his foot, I think his foot was like on a plank here and here, but this area was like she could reach up and grab like the middle over his metatarsals, right? She did, and she pulled and broke all of them. And the guy was like screaming, and she felt so bad. She was crying and went into the corner and felt really bad because she hurt somebody. Like she had no intent of harming anything. And orangutans in general are very gentle. But that's, their strength, they don't even realize it. So I'm rambling on about primates, but I'm loving all
these stories. I'm like nerding out right now. These stories, like they're unbelievable animals. Like my fiance gets very tired of the amount of documentaries that I watch. She's like, I can't do another one tonight. Oh man, just constantly, like, I can't stop watching documentaries about the orangutans or any sort of primate. It's just animals in general. But like,
I mean, when we did our episode on Coco, we were talking about Coco. Oh, it was just like the entire time we were like on the verge of tears.
Oh
like,
yeah,
the entire time. It's just they're amazing animals.
What a special gorilla!
Amazing animals, and her counterpart Michael also. They both did you know this? They both painted very frequently, and those paintings were sold. Well, they were put in the gallery first, and then they were sold, and that money went to conservation efforts for gorillas.
I knew she did. I didn't realize
Michael also,
Michael didn't get enough press.
Yeah, Michael
Coco got all the love. Like, I actually didn't know about Michael.
And then in Dume, the gorilla, the male gorilla they tried to breed her with, that Coco was not interested in, also painted.
Yeah.
All three of them painted, and all those paintings sold. And like, these are smart animals, gentle animals that obviously in the right setting can be studied, and we can learn a lot more how they are in the wild, and that goes towards the conservation efforts.
Yeah. Right. I mean, animals like that, and that's like, that's a good topic for conversation, regarding places like good quality zoos. A way to look at it is these species, these individuals rather, are they're ambassadors, are kind of taking one for the team.
Yeah.
And so they're providing a means of most people who don't have the opportunity, like me, where I've been so lucky I've gotten to see gorillas in the wild in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and in Rwanda. and in places where it's just not realistic for most people.
Yeah.
And for them to see that and appreciate them and look eye to eye of a real living gorilla is going to be at a good zoo. Like that's a great place to do it. And good zoos provide great habitats. These animals have good lives. Like they don't have all the scary things in the wild. I'm not saying I want to take all the wildlife and put them in captivity, but captivity doesn't have to be so bad. And some species actually thrive and do pretty darn good in it. But some better than others. And if you do it right, they can be such an important ambassador for their species and really help in such a big way towards their conservation.
Yeah, I think like you were saying, growing up, going out, playing with frogs and stuff like that in the creek, being able to have that exposure at a young age.
Also, sorry, we all had the same childhood, by the way.
Yeah, I did. I had a creek right behind my house.
You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh,
wasn't it the best, dude?
My mom would always be like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "You know where I'm going." I would have my little like raincoat on, and I'd go into the woods, and I'd be. Oh my God, my poor mom. I would come home with frogs, lizard, anything I could get my hands on. Like, can it live with us for a little bit? She'd be like,
I had a pet owl for 2 weeks because it just flew in and wouldn't leave.
Oh, really? I
flew in the house, wouldn't leave.
We had a bat, and I think I was like 6 or 7. I named it Batty. Again, I'm really good at naming stuff. And it lived in between. It would during the day. She would be asleep between the window and the screen in my bedroom, and like for like a whole summer, I would just sit there all day and just stare at her. Yeah. But like,
she would just fly in and out.
Yeah,
like
there was like a little hole that was like her little spot to be.
That's so cool. Where was this?
It was I grew up on Long Island, and I was at my parents' house, and it was just like a little. Okay. What are the bats that we have on Long Island?
I don't know. Probably fruit bats, just regular, like the little tiny ones. What are those called?
She's little.
They're very small, yeah.
But like,
there's probably one species in Long Island.
That was the whole thing for me. Was just growing up. I grew up with dogs and stuff like that, but it was just like. Any little animal I could see and like interact with, my brain was just like I fell in love with it. And so like being able to see those animals in person, especially at a younger age, when you're kind of like starting to figure out, what do I like? What are the things that like interest me? I think those could be life-changing experiences. Like, you could see an elephant on TV all day long. You see an elephant in real life, you're like, oh my God. Like they're just these beautiful animals. And I think even for someone who, if they're not an animal person, being able to be near them and like experience them, it can be like massively perspective shifting when it's done right.
Oh, huge. Especially that critical, and there's many critical periods, but at young ages. I mean, one of my favorite opportunities was where I used to live here in California. There was a California king snake in the parking lot, and I was living in like an apartment complex kind of thing. And this other family was out, and this mom and her 2 or 3 daughters saw it. They're freaking out, and I just happened to be walking by, going in or out of my place or something, and they're freaking out about this snake, and they're so scared and worried there's snakes here. And I go and grab it. I know what it is. I know it's harmless, and it's totally cool. And these little girls went from being so scared, which I think, as children learn from their parents, it had to do a lot with the mom not being a big fan of snakes. And I show them like, no, hey, it's super cool. Like you can touch it. And they touch it. And then they're looking at it. And then they want to hold it. And then going from like being like horrified, frightened to, can we can keep this as a pet? Can we keep this? Can we get a snake?
Yeah.
Like it changed everything. And it was such a, like, I really think that moment, that completely, dude, they won't be afraid of snakes anymore.
Yeah. Those like, little girls have a 5-foot ball python now.
Yeah. It's amazing, dude. Did you say your girls?
No, I'm saying those little girls definitely have a pet snake now. But that's totally. One thing. Like I never, so as a kid, I grew up in Argentina, and we came across just a lot of different animals, not overwhelming, like like a cobra or whatever. There were these like little wild hamsters that we would come across. There were these like garden snakes that weren't really garden snakes because they bit hard. I don't know. Yeah, but like
you would think they were a garter snake species?
No, they were garden snakes, but they were aggressive. They would come at you. I don't know. They were like these dark green color. And this is in Argentina, by the way. And I was terrified of those things because they would be all over the place, like little tiny things. They wouldn't like maybe like, I don't know, 10 inches max. And one day I was able to get close enough to like a little baby one, and it went on my hand and it didn't do anything. And it just sat there and it started slithering through my arm. I'm like, holy fuck. This is the coolest fucking thing ever. Yeah. I got to hold a little fucking snake as a 7-year-old, and that changed my entire perspective on snakes. I love snakes so much that even in my job interview, I talked about snakes, and they made fun of me because I was talking about the very specific feeling of holding a snake. It's not like holding any other animal. You can feel the muscle. You can feel the constriction, the movement. And it's not slimy. People think they're slimy. They're not slimy. They're just reptiles.
No.
And I got made fun of, but they got me the job.
You get made fun of. We just thought it was endearing that you spent 25 minutes of your interview discussing how much you love this snake.
Her name was Tara. It was a 2-foot ball python that I got to hold. My buddy from college, he had one, and honestly, I wanted a snake myself, but no one in my family seems to like them. So
I think I have that recording somewhere, by the way, that we have to listen to.
Oh my god! What's funny? So my last job interview, which was for the hospital I work at now, that came up in my interview too. So don't feel bad. I was talking about like loving wild. Like at that time, the hospital's owned by sole owner Dr. Todd Hughes, awesome vet, still works there, super cool guy. We get along great. And he loves to travel. He loves to get in the wild. He's a really big fisherman. And he was like, man, I just got back from, I want to say Nicaragua or something. He was in Central America. And he caught this big, like, red-tailed boa. I'm like, oh dude, that's badass. Like, that's super cool. And then I was like, man, when I was there, like, in the country near, like, in Costa Rica. And maybe he was, like, right near around there. I was like, yeah, you want to see what I caught there? And I pull up this YouTube video of me with this big jumping, the common name is a jumping pit viper. It looks like a New World version of a gaboon viper, a little bit smaller, but super thick body, like big fat diamond head, long, huge fangs for its size. One of probably some of the longest fangs in the New World. And he was like, oh, all right, you gotta show me up, huh? And we were just cracking up about it, but like, we hit it off. I think I had the job before then, but that definitely, you got to talk about snakes, man. It's going to seal the deal.
It's such a badass thing to talk about, too.
How we got the job.
Yeah, it's such a bad, like, look at what I held. It's like, yeah, are you fucking kidding me? You're holding a snake. You're like a Bond villain. Then you got the job.
Actually, speaking of other things that Mauro and I have been obsessed with, so I know you've been to Komodo Island.
Yeah.
What was snakes, that man. Like? Just the snakes, dude, also the Komodo, like... I need to know what that was like.
We don't even have a question.
Yeah, I don't have a question. Just tell me about it.
Komodo Island is seriously, it's one of the herping paradise places, really. And you guys know herping, but just for your listeners, just in case you guys don't talk about it every episode, herping is a hobbyist term for looking for reptiles or working with reptiles, and herp is short for herpetologist, which is the study of reptiles and amphibians. And so we'll say go herping if we want to go look for snakes or turtles or whatever reptile amphibian you want to look for. Man, Komodo is super strong for that. So before I went, I don't know, maybe when we got there, I was traveling with my best buddy, Tim, and he's in a couple chapters of my book, including I talked about this place in my book, and that was wild. And so we get there, I'm like, it's really a day trip place. And people go from the island to Rinca, they take a boat, they do a hike or two on the island, they hang out for the day, have lunch, and they're done. There's no reason for most people, unless you're like super duper fascinated with the wildlife on the island. Most travelers, they're just going to do a day thing. And there's really nowhere to stay. There's not accommodation. Yeah. It's just for the rangers and the people working in the park that stay there. We get there, I'm like, listen, I have been obsessed and wanting to go to this place as soon as I learned what it was as a young kid. Like the Komodo dragon is like, I've been dying to see this animal and I just want to get as many moments as I can with them. And I was familiar that there's some other cool wildlife on the island I was hoping to see as well. And basically worked out with the rangers that we could stay for very cheap at that time. It was 2013. They put us up in one of their, it was like a stilted wooden structure, like it was above ground so the lizards wouldn't go into your place and stuff. And they're not trying to eat you per se, but like you don't want them wandering in.
Yeah.
It can totally happen, and if even if they did a curious bite, like as you guys know, they can be it can be pretty bad news.
Ruin your weekend.
They're not. People say they're venomous. There's not. I don't think it's a venom thing. I think it's a bacterial thing.
Yeah, we explained that. We did an episode on them, and they're fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, their mouths, they have some unique bacteria in them, but nothing super crazy. A big part of it is it's such a deep tissue wound, and then so that's setting up for infection. You get a monitor bite, dude, it's not good, and then that's literally the biggest monitor, the biggest lizard in the world, right? And in a lot of these animals, they go into little water bodies, and it's like and then it gets super infected because the dirty water, which is a lot of stagnant water, seeps in, and then they're septic and dying a week later and getting eaten alive and dying and everything. Not to get gory. Anyways, okay, so we're staying in this place. They worked out where we could stay there for like 4 or 5 days. We're just eating ranger food. I'm eating like canned sardines and peas and rice. Excuse me, just whatever we can come across there. And when they have meals. And dude, I mean, there's so much to see there. Like our second night, or maybe our first night, we were exhausted. We're like wrapping up dinner. They would just bring us a plate of food to where the building we were staying at. It was just me and Tim. Like we would, we saw tourists walking around during the day with their guides, but they're like, yeah, you guys do what you want. Like, it's cool. They knew I was a veterinarian at the time. And I wasn't on social. I couldn't like pull up an Instagram and be like, hey, like, I work with these animals. I showed them a lot of times what I'll do is I'll show some pictures to also help prove that I work with these animals. Like go to places and I say, I want to, work with this venomous snake or whatever. Like, what? And I'm like, well, here's me with like a 7-foot fer-de-lance, or here's me with a 5-foot rattlesnake. Like I do this, it's cool. And so like they get mellow. And it seems kind of silly, but it's really worked and really helped. So anyways, we're wrapping up dinner. We're exhausted. It was a long day of traveling between boats and buses just to get there, especially on our budget at the time. And I grabbed my headlamp to go take our dishes from our place to the kitchen, which is it was like, 100-something meters away, like not super far. But I'm like, we're around these buildings, snakes-like buildings, these wooden structures, like, we might see something, who knows. And so for the building right before the kitchen, I see this like 5-foot Timor python, super beautiful python, and it's just sitting on a roof slat of this building. I'm like, dude, fuck yeah, like this is it. Let's do it. This is awesome. And so there's obviously a couple rangers sleeping in the building, and I'm just like, it's cool. I'll just climb up. We'll be good. And I scale the side of it. There was a couple boards sticking out, so it wasn't too hard to climb up and up to the roof area. And then I get myself situated where I'm staying on the roof on like the walls came up to a point, and then there was an A-frame on top of those. So I'm standing on the top of a wall and then putting my weight on a crossboard, like scaffolding kind of thing there, and then reaching out to the base, to the lower part of the A-frame to try to grab the snake. And I'm inches from it, just inches, like right, like, oh my God, so close, and then boom, snap. Like the board I was on snapped underneath me. Okay, and it was like these walls weren't short. I think it was at least 10 feet. And I fall, land on my feet, which was a shock because I didn't even know it happened. These buildings are like, they must be 40 or 50 years old. Yeah. I mean, they're weathered. And I'm in a huge dust cloud, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm on my feet. I don't know if I'm fucked up or anything. Yeah. Like, I'm looking around, making sure I don't have any rusty nails embedded in my legs or in my arms or anything. And I was fine. And like people outside heard like that crash, like they heard something go down, and they see dust coming from where the walls come over the roof, and I open the door and a big dust cloud comes out, and I walk out and they're like, dude, are you okay? I'm like, yeah.
I think so.
Through the roof, but the snake got away. Yeah. And I was like, I got lights on me. I'm like looking at a huge bruise on my arm and on the same leg on like my hamstring area. And that was it, dude. No rusty nails, no fractures. My feet were okay. Like everything was fine. It was just such a blessing that I was okay. And all the rangers are like, dude, you're you're insane. What are you doing? I'm like, it's a python. It's whatever.
I'm okay. There was a snake on the roof.
Yeah. So they're like, you're insane. And I'm like, I've had some moments like that where I get really close, like so close that you can just taste it. And it doesn't happen. And when that happens to me, I can't get it out of my head. Like I'm so distracted by it. And I went from being like ready to pass out because after a big day, to being like, dude, I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking. Like I was so close. I want to catch a snake so bad. Like we're here. I'm in Komodo. Like I just got fully wired and jazzed about it all over again. And we're walking back to the room, and not even like 30 feet from there, I'm shining my light, just hoping for whatever. I see a gorgeous subadult, bright green, like a green tree viper sitting in this tree. Like I don't even have to climb it to get it. It's like 7 feet up. It's like just right above my head. I'm like, oh, like this is amazing. And it's like the first time I saw a viper like that in that country. And I had my hook with me. I brought it. When I'm placed like that, it's just pretty much always with me. You just never know what you're going to see. And you got spinning cobras and vipers there. Like you got to have the hook, right? And so I gently just take this thing off the tree. Some of these rangers are still out, and they're like, "Dude, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "No, it's cool, man. We're just gonna get some pictures and like just talk about it for a minute and get some like educational video kind of thing, like I'd been doing for a few years at that point." And then some of the rangers were actually like, "You know what? Like, can you teach us like how to handle this? Like how because we come across these sometimes and." We don't want, tourists to be scared of them. We don't want them coming to our place. We don't want to hurt them because they are part of the wild. Like this whole island, we're celebrating the wildlife here. We're really not trying to impose on its wildlife. And so I was just kind of teaching them how to basically hook and where to put it under the animal. And you can move it into a bucket or a bag and just always stay away from the mouth and the strike range and all that kind of stuff. And it just worked out so beautifully. And then the next day I caught 2 spitting cobras, Javan spitting cobras. And I wanted to see a cobra so bad there because I knew they had spitters there. And those were stunning. And then I saw a couple more vipers. I saw a colubrid that I don't know what species it was. And tons of lizards. I got amazing pictures of lizards walking around, slurping their tongues out. And they're so habituated to people.
Yeah.
Like when you go out in the wild and look for monitors, they're skittish. Some individuals and species maybe more than others. But in general, like pretty much any species is super skittish. Like you either have to be really fast or you have them cornered in a place where you can try to catch them and work with them if you need to, but I've had to run after them to catch them before, like full sprint kind of thing. But man, these ones, they just don't run. They're like, they know people aren't going to mess with them.
Yeah.
And they're very comfortable around people. And I mean, there's always monitors hanging around the kitchen waiting for, they're hoping scraps or something are going to fall out of the kitchen or something.
Yeah.
Because it always smells good in that area, And it was a trip, dude. It was just a trip. Like it's just this big dinosaur island. It's beautiful, Well, I didn't get to go super far into the island. Everything was on foot, and if I went too far from camp, like they pretty much, made it more or less a requirement to have a guide with us, just be on the safe side. And I would just bring one guide, and he was always cool. But it was very hot during the day. It was very hot at night. But I can handle any weather if I'm going to be in a place like that, seeing that wildlife. Like I don't give a shit where I'm sleeping. I don't care what I'm eating. It's just so low priority. Then it's like if that's what you have to do to see this in their native habitat in this crazy part of the world,
anywhere
like
else,
I don't give a shit what I'm eating or where I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
I've slept in the nastiest beds and hostels and camping, and it just doesn't matter. It's just such a low priority. Like it'd be nice to go back somewhere I could take a good shower and AC and sleep in a comfortable bed, but if not. It's not going to stop me from seeing this stuff. Like this is too
Or
good.
I get to see a Komodo dragon and all these amazing snakes.
Oh, dude, we saw macaques. We saw some of those deer. I didn't see any predatory events.
Yeah.
We saw some
They don't
of those,
eat often. We learned that.
Buffalo.
They eat like once a year or something, like something like that.
They can. They can if they get some big reptiles like that. They can really slow it down and eat very infrequently. And they're one of those few reptiles that will eat with multiple individuals involved in the same carcass.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah.
There's some crocodiles that do that, right? But otherwise, man, there's other than that species of monitor, it's pretty uncommon.
Yeah.
Pretty uncommon. Usually it's, for reptiles in general, it's eating a whole animal at once, and they're just biting up chunks whole. And there's up to, 10, 20 animals on a buffalo or a deer or something,
Huh. Actually, I didn't remember that. That's pretty cool. Actually, you had, I think there was a picture I think we just posted of you. That's with a big water monitor, right?
Yeah. The cover of the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a captive animal. That was a rescue. Super sweet lizard. And I was doing this photo shoot for another basic magazine, wanted to do a thing. And I brought in a couple rescue reptiles from this organization I've worked with, and they had these just big, beautiful snakes and lizards, and that monitor was such a sweetie and super cool to work with.
Yeah.
And he was kind of climbing on me, and I was like, man, I think I can just put him on my shoulder and he'll be cool. So we just kind of went with it, and he was just on my shoulder, and it was so good.
That's such a fucking cool shot. I had it in
you get to cuddle
they're
a monitor on your shoulder.
Monitors are such cool animals. I had in college a Savannah monitor. And,
me too.
Oh, really?
was his name Clarence too?
Bears.
Mine was named Clarence. And
that's actually a good name. I like that.
He was amazing. We actually almost lost our housing my freshman year of college because I basically turned our dorm into a zoo. And I didn't want to keep him in a small terrarium, so we actually, my poor roommates, I converted our kitchenette area basically into a huge terrarium for him because he was getting bigger and bigger. And it got to the point where the RA came into our room. We had piranhas. We had a Pac-Man frog.
Like
we
Ace
had
Ventura over here.
chameleon. My RA came in. He's like, what the fuck are you? You can't do this. You're not allowed to have these animals in here. And one of the things I'm very proud of
man.
is there are, I think, like 16 rules I went to Loyola, or that's Loyola University. 16 rules pertaining to what pets you could have on campus, and so
you were the patron saint of that rule.
I was, but yeah, no, he was. Monitors are great. He was such a cuddly guy. He would just sit on my shoulder.
Especially. Dude, I literally slept with that lizard most nights.
Yeah,
like I'm not like pretty much every night because they just want to be somewhere warm. They don't really want to cuddle. It's not like that. They don't have that.
They're not like puppies.
Reptiles are born meant to survive on their own. There's no adaptation or reason for them to cuddle or groom or hunt together or protect each other. It's just not like that. But they like to be somewhere warm, so I sleep on my back, and she would either sleep like between my side and my arm, or like on me right here, like every night, and she wouldn't move.
Yeah,
and I loved it. I thought it was so fun, and I really truly enjoyed it. And I didn't have nearly that extreme of a situation, so I love what you're talking about with your zoo. But like I had a small walk-in closet kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that the base, the bottom half of that was converted into a concealed, low-key, a Savannah monitor enclosure because I could hide it.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to have any pets in that dorm at University of Colorado Boulder. But yeah, dude, loved it.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Sneaking those lizards in was the best. Was when I had to go back for Christmas breaks. I was home for like a month or something like that. So I'm taking the train. So I'm transporting the monitor, piranhas, and like 6 or 7 other animals. And I was trying, I was making sure that I had like the heat lamp out. So at one point I took them out, and this woman is sitting next to me. And you can tell she is paralyzed with fear. She's shaking and like darting.
You keep pulling out a new reptile?
Yeah, I keep pulling all these different animals out. I'm like, no, like he's super friendly. God. By the end of the trip, she was like petting him and stuff like that. But like in the beginning, I was like, this one's gonna have a stroke.
Yeah, little by little, you gotta educate them. Little by little.
Yeah, and
exactly, dude. It's simply like, come on, how many people have you met where maybe there's some where they'll never be. You can never convert them, but I mean, pretty much anybody I've met, they'll go from being like shaking, like kind of paralyzed. I'm like, go super slow. I don't try to impose it on them, but get them to finally just like touch the tail, just the tail. Yeah. Like I got the head. It's not doing.
He's not going to touch
hurt you. It's nothing. Just the tail. Okay, move your way. Before you know, a lot of these people are holding them.
Yeah.
They realize, oh my gosh, like, oh, this is. I had this whole thing in my head, and it's like, no. Yeah. And the funny thing is that kind of fear exists all over the world, even places where these animals are native to. Mm-hmm. Like I learned this early on in my travels, and I see this all over the world: Central, South America, Southeast Asia, Africa. And I'm in Tanzania. I'm staying with the Maasai, and the Maasai, I mean, they live. I mean, they're exposed to snakes and scorpions and stuff all the time, and they think every lizard's venomous. They think everything can kill you. And I catch this little house gecko kind of thing, just a little a good size for the species, but not a super big lizard. I'm like, you guys, it can't hurt you. I've got a whole crowd of people around me thinking I'm insane. I'm like, watch, I'm going to let this thing bite me, and you'll see everything's going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen. I promise you, it can't hurt you. It's not venomous. And the only reason you're going to get bit, which is the worst case, which is nothing, is if you try to pick it up. Like, if you leave it alone, it will never be an issue. And so I had this thing bite me right on the lip to be like that dramatic about it, to show them like nothing will happen. I'm having it bite my face, right? And it backfired. It didn't work at all. The lizard bit my lip. That worked great. That was all fine. But basically, I'm pretty sure they thought I was some kind of like white witch thing or something. Like I wasn't a person. And they just like, no, exactly. Oh, Mzungu is translates to white person in Kiswahili, by the way, which you guys obviously know. But it was like, and some of them did speak, they speak Maasai and everything, but some of them spoke a little bit Kiswahili. And they just think like, no. Like you're some kind of freak. Like now we don't trust you, and we don't trust reptiles.
I feel like that fear stems from, obviously like mythology, media, and religion. You have the reptiles always being the bad guys. They're being portrayed as these vicious, predatory, against humans, just absolute monsters.
I wonder though if something that even roots behind those things that you just said, which are very real and play a very big part of it. You just nailed it. I think those are some big ones. With snakes in particular, like I wonder if there is an evolutionary component. because, I mean, most snakes are not venomous.
Yeah.
Most snakes leave you alone. They're generally not an issue. But when you're thinking about, living a simple lifestyle, or like even the human species, and it's early on, like, dude, we were exposed to wildlife obviously everywhere we were.
Yeah.
And the worst case scenario with a lot of different venomous snakes, especially where humans started, where there's a lot of hots in southern and South Africa, where the human race started, like, was an adaptation to have this irrational fear to avoid this animal.
Yeah.
Because so many other animals do, where snakes may or may not be a threat. They're like, and so I wonder if that played into it. And then this fear and discomfort played into the religion, the mythology, the media. I don't know, but there's this. I mean, being in the animal space, and you guys are too. I'm sure you've seen this constantly, especially being reptile people. Like, there is an abundant, irrational fear of snakes.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're they're
weird.
venomous
like,
or not.
to us, it's weird.
And there's such a not. I mean, I'd rather be bit
cool
by
animals. Like,
almost any snake than what that snake eats.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I'd rather be bit by a big 16-foot python than a big rat than it would eat. Like, you've been bit by a little rodent, it's like a big staple remover.
Yeah, it's nasty.
It's brutal. And rats, to be honest, most rat pets, I've never been bit by a pet rat, and I've worked with hundreds. That's a bad example because they're such sweet animals. But like mouse bites, and I've been bit by some rabbits.
Hamster scars.
Yeah,
all over my
hamsters.
hand.
I mean, I expect to be attempted to be bit by a hamster and gerbil. You kind of have to scruff them, like gently scruff them, just to work with them, because they're going to bite. They're not good pets, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, the snake, like, that's just not even a bad. Like, they're, to me, like, just the least scary reptile in a lot of ways, because they can't really do much. I mean, don't mess with a venomous snake, you could die, right?
Yeah.
But if we're talking about, like, most of our North American colubrids, for example, like, other than parts of the South where you have, like, coral snakes, like, if you have a little bit of a handle on it, you can distinguish a crotalid from a colubrid.
Yeah.
And for the most parts, it usually has a rattle. And if it doesn't, it can't do anything, and it doesn't want to do anything to hurt you.
Also, it's not, even if, say, the snake is venomous, it wants nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
It wants to stay as
people
far
say
away
these messed
from
up
you as
stories
possible.
about cottonmouths coming after them in the water, or animals. And man, I work with people, even black mamba has this reputation, and some people even kind of in the field will say, they can be a bit aggressive, but I've seen some in the wild. They've never tried anything. And I've talked to people that have worked with hundreds where they do like capture and relocate kind of situations where they're in people's houses or that kind of thing. And, one of the last people I talked to, I mean, I bet he's for sure hundreds, if not thousands, of black mambas in South Africa. And he's like, never has one ever been offensive and gone after me, ever. Yeah. When they corner, they'll strike. Yeah. Okay, snakes will strike. They'll hold their ground like any animal will. But when you're a normal person, you're not trying to encounter them, they never do.
Yeah.
I mean, even a king cobra, like, I mean, people say, like, the three most aggressive ones are those, fertile ants, king cobra. I've not seen a lot of king cobra in the wild. I've never heard of them being like that from people that really work with them. Fertile ants, I've worked with probably a couple dozen fertile ants, like wild ones, that just caught that we're taking a look at, or just doing some educational pictures or video or that kind of thing. And they're just like a pretty aggressive, fast rattlesnake. And some are more mellow than others. I've had some fertile ants where they're not that bad.
That's the thing. You get a bite on video. That video goes viral, and then there's a confirmation bias that only bite videos from snakes are viral. Those are the only ones we can find. They are inherently just vicious and terrible.
People don't want to share videos.
I mean, another perfect...
Yeah. What about a snake just minding its own fucking business in the wild? They're just as beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, it's that easy.
I mean, the exact same thing with sharks, right?
Yes.
Everybody's going to hear about the shark bite. How many shark bites are there a year? Okay, probably on average less than 200.
Yeah.
Over half of those are provoked because people are feeding sharks, swimming with them, like putting themselves in a situation that the average person that's fearful of sharks is not going to be doing.
Right.
How many deaths a year? Average, like 6 usually, give or take a little bit. But like, it's so rare. And I mean, there's you can talk about struck by lightning and all the other reasons that can way more likely to kill you than a shark. More people die from being bit by humans in New York City than sharks kill people around the world every year.
I mean, that makes sense.
That makes
New York, for New York City,
absolutely. Kind of people that the average person's
sense.
Not hanging out with. I'm assuming these are people that are living below their means and maybe on or looking for drugs and probably homeless people doing that kind of thing, unfortunately. But like, that's real. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's hard. It's hard to paint.
Sharks.
It's hard to paint that picture. like I'm going back, like I'm a film bro. I love movies. Jaws did more to harm shark conservation than it did to help it. They try to
I know, it's such a good movie.
Yeah.
Too. Like, it's
no, but they try to like remediate it 2 movies later
terrible.
and like introduce a sort of charitable aspect
Yeah.
to keeping the shark population, and it didn't work because that movie fucking sucked. The first one portrayed the shark as the serial killer that just wanted to eat people in a beach. Like literally that's what it was portrayed as. And this was in the 70s, before the internet, before shark conservation was even a thing. Like really
there was, you know, just an insane amount. I mean, it's still happening. I'm sure. Have you seen Seaspiracy and that?
Yeah, like with the shark culls, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they still do it. They still do it in Australia. It's still. I mean, I posted something. There's this. People are trying to say shit like there's overpopulation of sharks in the Florida waters, and they're going out and just it's legal to kill them in non-state water and federal water.
Oh, that was the video you shared recently with somebody who was fucking shooting the like.
Oh, that makes me so
it's so
angry.
frustrating.
This chick that did it, dude, she's like a freak. She gets off to this. Like, she likes to do these controversial things, and she loves the haters, and she loves just jamming it in their face. Like, she's like, I mean, some people are into that, and she just totally gets off. That's why I didn't share her name.
Yeah.
That's just like, I don't want to give you what you want.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you. Like, I just want people to know that, like, this is a problem, but I'm not gonna engage on your profile. Because the analytics of how social works, dude, her profile grew a lot. Like a lot of other people that are like anti-shark or hunting or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not anti-hunting. Like, there's hunting super important conservation.
Oh, absolutely.
But like, just idiots that don't know. Yeah. She's growing and getting attention, and she's a super gross. Like, I mean, she's not sexual, but she's like a sadist.
Yeah.
Like, she super gets off on people getting, hurt. And obviously it's psychological and emotional pain, but she loves it.
That makes me angry.
She's gross, dude.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think, like you're saying, there's a lot of shitty stuff that can come out of social media, but then like, there's people like you and, there's so many people out there who are doing really good work, and, thank you for doing what you're doing. And honestly, like, one of the things I loved was the episode where you got to, I'm blanking on the name of the country you were in, but you were with a loris, and
in Sri Lanka.
Yes. Oh my god. I was at the gym, and I was like on the elliptical. I'm like freaking out, and I'm like yelling. I'm like, oh my god, there's a fucking loris! And somebody looks at me. It was like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, but being able to show people that stuff and see them up close next to a person, it makes it so much more of a tangible, real thing. It's not this obscure, like, here's this weird animal that lives in this country.
Videos of for years.
You're never gonna go to. Like, I think it kind of creates that human connection for people. So thank you for doing what you're doing, man. Like,
dude, it's my I love doing that. Like, I obviously was having the time of my life. That was on my birthday when we were filming that at that time. And it was such a blast. Like, I love it. I mean, it's such a win-win when I get to do that stuff, because it's literally my favorite thing in the world. I'm just always been so excited and passionate by that and about that. And then if I just like we were talking about earlier when I was saying how like Steve Irwin and those guys got people so excited about it. If I can do that, man, I mean, that's the goals. That's what I'm going for. Mission accomplished. Like, that's where it all starts. And then some people want to make a bigger difference and get it more into that world and see more and learn more and maybe help one day, and that's a great place for it to start.
Yeah, I think guys like Jeff Corwin, like I missed so many classes in college literally just watching his show. Like, I failed classes because of attendance because I was just watching Jeff Corwin's show like all day long.
I love it.
And it's like, people like Jeff, people like, Steve Irwin, like these people, like for me personally, had a tremendous impact on me. It was like, holy shit, you can you can live your life and this can be your job. That's incredible.
That's exactly how I looked at it. And they raise, I mean, listen, there's people that have done maybe in the trenches as significant or maybe even more significant things than Steve Irwin, for example. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I always say, listen, I think that guy and his family have gotten more people excited about wildlife than anybody in the history of the world, by far. I don't think anybody's done anywhere near that as much as him. And there's other huge, amazing people doing such big things. I'm so thankful for him. Not downplaying anybody else, because we super need those people. And I'm very humbled and appreciate their work. But dude, that guy, come on, he got more people stoked on animals than anybody.
Oh yeah,
that involvement starts with especially now in an era of just
3-second
attention spans. If something is entertaining and you can educate people on it and get them involved, power to you. And you're doing that, so we definitely thank you. You're super cool, and honestly, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for coming on, Evan. Like, one, we would love to have you back on, so I'm already gonna look for that commitment from you.
I'd be happy to. You guys, it's been a fun conversation. I love this style of podcast, just kind of shooting the shit and talking about what's going on in the world, and those are the ones I listen to too. And I'm stoked you guys reached out. I've been, like I said, I've been looking forward to this. I'm glad you're feeling better, Daniel.
Yes, yeah, I've survived COVID. I have nature's vaccine now.
Good for you, brother.
But for those of you listening, go check out Evan's book, World Wild Vet: Encounters in the Animal Kingdom. Go check out his show. Honestly, just go Google him. He's doing amazing stuff. If you are an animal fan and you love wildlife and conservation, definitely go check his stuff out. All of his social media is going to be right here.
And on the show notes for you listening, we got audio, by the way. This is audio and video.
Yeah.
Nice. I figured. Yeah. Look out for that stuff too. That's where I'll be showing my work, and I'm getting back out in the wild. I'll be in South Africa again soon, doing some of my favorite work, which is rhino conservation work.
Yes. Actually, do you have anything you'd like to leave with our listeners in terms of how they can support the work that you're doing or the organizations that you work with?
Yes. Rhino 911. NPO is their Instagram, rhino911.org. They do amazing work. I'm working with them. I've been working with them for almost over 4 years. And if you want to just check them out, if you want to donate, your money's going to the right place. Like it's a guarantee. You got my stamp of approval, and I've seen it firsthand. I know what they do. They're helping rhinos, and they're one of the biggest forces for rhino conservation in South Africa. And with the rhino, they help with the anti-poaching, with the horn trims, with protection, with everything. They do really incredible stuff. So please check them out, and you can follow my journey too. I'll be tagging them constantly and sharing that adventure that we're going to be partaking here pretty soon. Well,
thank you again so much. Have a safe trip. We are both super jealous of where you're headed next week, and we look forward to having you on again soon. And also that vet school recommendation letter. I'll be needing that as well.
Yeah, you let me know. Well, cheers. Thank you guys so much for what you do.
Thank you.
Super appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much.
We'll be in touch.
All right, thanks.
Cheers, guys.